This week on Flick Flops, we dive into the shadowy world of The Crow, directed by Rupert Sanders and starring Bill Skarsgård. Resurrected by a mystical crow, Eric returns to the world of the living on a mission of vengeance. Does this modern reboot capture the dark essence of the beloved comic, or does it fly too close to the sun? Join us as we discuss this new vision for The Crow. This is Flick Flops. Before we get started, please hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoy these reviews and would like to see more. We would greatly appreciate it, and it would help our little channel grow.
A little Icarus reference there, Gary.
Like that?
How you doing, buddy?
Good. Good.
We're fresh off seeing The Crow.
Yep.
Real quick, I'll just throw out Rotten Tomatoes. Just they have it sitting currently, and we'll.
I'm curious because I looked earlier, and there was not a audience number at the time. Is that?
Yeah, there still is no audience number on the
Okay.
popcorn meter, as they're calling it now. Gary, this Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting at 21.
21.
That
Okay.
is rotten. How say you, Gary? What is where is your toilet paper meter at?
Are we going to jump into the ratings already?
Let's do the ratings so we can get
All
into the meat, because there might be spoilers ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, ratings. A quick reminder that our rating system is unconventional. We don't hand out stars, we hand out poos and TPs, up to 5 of them. And just to add more confusion, the more we give, the crappier we think the film is. Crappier, get it? Yeah, it's dumb, but that's the way we do it.
Rating. That was so good, Gary.
Thanks. So,
Because people only watch. Well, they're not even watching this far into the show at this point.
well, look, going into this, I will say just to preempt why my TP rating is what it is. I will say that going into this, I did like the 94 version of The Crow.
Sure.
I did not read the comic book until recently in anticipation of this movie. And so it wasn't like I was some diehard huge fan. So going into this,
Same here.
fan of the first one, a fan of Brandon Lee. There's also the controversy, dark, whatever you want to see it,
Sure.
shadow over the whole movie because of what happened on set. So going into it, but I didn't go into it with a feeling of they are stomping on, like sacred ground.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, there's a faction that thought this should never be done.
Yes.
Including the original writer of the original version of the film. He thought they should never remake The Crow, even though they had sequels to it. Because I think I read this is actually the 5th movie in the catalog of The Crow.
Right, which is amazing to me. I had no idea.
Right. And so the guy who did the original, Alex, I think his name's Proyas.
Yeah.
He tried to stop this. He's not a fan of it.
Is he yes, you're right. He is the original. Yeah.
So yes, but I'm like you. I don't have a problem with the remake. I'm not saying you should, although it's a nice gesture if you were going to do that. I mean, it was kind of Brandon Lee's legacy, so to speak.
And we talk about some movies that we see from a long time ago that like this could be nice to have a fresh reboot of this movie.
Absolutely,
kind of updated and give. So I'm okay with the prospect of something like that. And like I said, this is not one that I went into feeling like absolutely should not be made. This could be garbage. I'm not giving it my money. So with that said, I will tell you, and we can explain why I gave this film 2.5 TPs.
Oh, okay. 2.5. All right. I'm going to come at you, Gary, a little messier. Again, based on our rating system, the more poop and toilet paper you have, the worse the film is. Gary, I'm going to give this thing 4.
4
4 steaming piles of poop on this film.
Hot, fresh, and stinky poos.
And we will discuss at this point, and if you want to put up a little spoilers thing, because we may spoil something. Again, if you haven't seen the original and you're unfamiliar with the story of The Crow, then maybe you want to stop watching at this point. Or if you're not a fan of me,
I would just say at this point,
maybe you can stop watching at this point.
There will be spoilers. I'm not even going to try. I just don't know that we could talk about it without talking spoilers. It's not like a movie that we were saying off camera right before we started. It's not like it's a movie that you don't know what's going to happen. If you know anything about The Crow, you're going to know it. So
yeah, and it's not like a M. Night Shyamalan movie where we're going to give away a twist. We go, oh my god, I didn't know it was going to happen. It's just there's certain things we need to talk about.
Yeah, and I don't feel like I can if we have reins. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and talk about, what do you want to talk about first, the good or the bad? I think we should talk about the bad, because I'd like to come around to the good.
I think you should lead, because I mean, and I'm not trying to be funny or facetious. I don't have a lot of good to say about this film, and I'm not really, I'm doing everything. I'll preface with saying I am not trying to literally shit on this film. I'll say it very simply. There's an audience for this film. It is not me. And I loved the original. And I'll say again, spoiler, if you like the original, if you like it a lot, you're in for a little bit of a surprise. This film does not parrot the original.
You can't go into this thinking that it's going to be, first of all, I thought I heard that this was supposed to be another attempt at remaking the comic book. Not at all.
Because you just read the comic.
I just read it again.
Hey, hang on, I got a review. Can I read a review before you go any further?
Absolutely, do it.
I did pick out a review because it kind of echoed what I was trying to say.
Okay.
So I have a review from Matthew Jackson from the AV Club. He's considered a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes. And Matthew Jackson says, quote, "The results are bleak, unimaginative, and despite the presence of a couple of bona fide good actors, tiresome to watch. It's a film that can't help but remind you of the original, if only because you'll be longing to rewatch that movie instead."
Well, I haven't rewatched it first.
End quote. And look, that is kind of where I land with this. I actually had someone message me privately on Facebook because I posted that I was going to see this movie, and they were like, they're like, I just can't with this. I said, listen, I can't put my opinion out publicly because we're going to do a show about it. But I said privately to him, you're not missing anything. You will not enjoy it, because based on what you just said, I know you won't enjoy this film. And to me, I'm coming from a place of love for the Brandon Lee version. Now, I don't know how close it is to the comic, and I'll let you talk about that. But that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think it's a horrible film, but my opinion of the film from where I stand, I did not enjoy it that much. There was some joy in it, but not much. And it's just, again, my opinion.
I wrote down it takes way too long to get to the crux of the story, to the whole thing that sets off.
You dead on.
It takes freaking forever. At one point I was like, is it, I was wondering if it was going to be like a trilogy or something, because they had so that was one huge knock against it right off the bat. I understand the idea of, and this is, like I said, we're going to be talking about spoilers. I understand the idea of, hey, let's try to show the budding romance between these two characters. But in putting that stuff at the beginning, you then have to rush the whole story of them, and it never becomes believable enough to be like a real true love scenario where the whole thing of the movie is supposed to be. It's really like a romance story. Ultimately, it's
his undying love for this woman,
and it doesn't.
We have no time frame of reference.
Yeah, and it seems like the events of the things that are happening that start everything, it seems like it has to be happening fairly quickly, because they're looking for this girl and they find her, and then they're in. They escape together from this place that they're at, and then they're doing a little bit, and it's not really montage, but it's just these little scenes of them together and doing stuff. You're supposed to be seeing a passage of time, but with these people being chased, that makes it seem like that's happening faster, because there's people actively looking for them. So
it feels like this has happened over a weekend.
Yeah.
Like they got out, and 4 days later, it's like, I've fallen in love, but I don't know.
Not that quick.
If I die for somebody in 4 days, like,
there's just that. And this is with how long that took to develop. I'm like, why wouldn't they have done the flashback, start off with them in love and do a flashback like they did with the original movie? Because you got everything you needed from that in flashbacks. By trying to tell the story linearly, easy for me to say. I'm so jazzed about talking about it. I can't get the words out. When trying to tell the story linearly like that, you then run into that problem of it seems rushed. The relationship is rushed. Therefore, how can they really care about each other that much, that their undying love?
Yes.
I don't know. That really kind of irritated me for the majority of the movie. It is not a true retelling of the comic at all. The 94 version, is it 94? That version of the movie that Brandon Lee was in was pretty close. Not perfect, but pretty close to the comic. Now, I will say I read the updated version of the comic where there's some additional artwork that the creator made, some things that he wasn't able to do when he first released the comic because of the size of the book and the way they had to print it using a web press. So there were extra parts that were put into that book using the same techniques that he would have used back then. That adds just a little extra flavor to the story. Okay. And one of those having to do with a horse. I don't believe the horse thing was in the original comic, but having not read it, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's what he had mentioned in the foreword.
Okay.
And part of that actually kind of got me a little excited at the beginning of the movie when the horse was tangled up in the barbed wire at the beginning. I was like, oh man, they might actually actually do a really good job with this. And it didn't. It didn't work. It didn't work the way they did it. That was just a little touch on something that was important from the comic book, but really didn't land with the movie because it's only in there twice and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense the way they tried to put it in there.
Right. I agree. I agree with you so far.
I will say the crow itself, the idea of the crow is briefly mentioned on how the crow works and bringing the spirit, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't seem very integral to the whole thing. I mean, it should be a presence and the crow's there, here and there. But if you didn't know anything about this going in, you would be like, I don't really understand why it's called the crow. I don't get it. I don't really get that the whole thing. There's a guy involved that's in this sort of in-between place. And
yeah, like the mythology of it.
Which is cool. I like the extra stuff they kind of threw in there. But you don't really get a sense of the crow, like it being, the whole gist of it. It just doesn't seem to be there. I felt like if you removed that idea or backed off that idea as much as they did, similar to how you described Roadhouse, when they redid Roadhouse, why didn't they just title it something different? And it's sort of the same story in a way. Why didn't they do the crow as another thing and not the crow? Because it didn't really need it.
So yeah, so for a second there, you brought something really good there. I think by naming it the crow, all right, I think you've hurt this film.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I know you're basing it off of this guy's book. I understand that, but you could have this story outside of it being the crow would have been okay. I mean, they need some help with the script. I'm not gonna lie there, but my point is when you title such a beloved cult film, all you're gonna get is comparisons.
Right.
That's
can't
all
escape
you're gonna get, and it's not gonna be good because unless your film is just stellar, which is that's a tall order, you're not gonna hold up to the original because there's so much love for the original film. So that's a good point, Gary. That they could have named it. They
could have named it anything and put inspired by.
They could have called it Murdering the Crow. I'm done. I'll stop right there.
That's a lot of the bad stuff for me. I felt like it takes an hour to get to the movie, but that's where I come in with the 2.5. Here's another reason. There's two reasons. One is after that, you get through that. I actually liked the rest of the movie. I actually thought it was kind of cool. And some of the stuff I really liked was the opera fight scene with the way the opera played in the background. I thought that was pretty cool. It was kind of John Wick kind of style.
I mean, look, this is John Wick. I mean, okay.
But it was cool after, I guess maybe, you know what? Maybe I was so starved for stuff at that point. I don't know.
I like how no one in the opera notices the massive amount of gunfire going on just
Yeah.
outside the door. It's like, I don't know how
Yeah.
soundproof that room is, but my Lord.
There was something that happened in the movie, and I cannot remember what it was now. It's going to drive me nuts until I remember, so I'll be calling you at some point, because I was like, there's a continuity thing right there that's got to be driving Andy crazy, and I don't remember what it was now.
Oh, there was one in the beginning you talked about that I just was like, I was a little lost on it. We can talk about it off
Okay, all right.
Now, but.
So the other reason that I backed off a little bit harsher score was because I was with somebody that knew nothing about The Crow. In fact, it was her discussion after seeing it, Tara. It was her discussion after seeing it, saying I didn't really understand the Crow part of it, and I was like, well, it was said in there, but it was very fleeting, and there wasn't really a lot of emphasis on it. So without knowing any of the mythology, any of the story at all, I could understand that somebody going in blind and not knowing anything about it might be a little confused by the Crow thing.
Sure.
She actually liked the movie and gave it she said, if I gave it TPs, I'd give it 1.5. And I was like, well,
really?
Then maybe, I was like, so maybe there is an audience for this movie. It's just not Crow fans. So, which is why I kind of went down the middle, honestly, because I thought, you know what, on its merit, after it gets past all of the stuff that I feel like it made a huge mistake with, like if you took the Crow out of it, as far as the name and all that, it's still not a great movie, but it's a better movie, because you can't make those comparisons like you're saying. Because it's a Crow movie, you see all the mistakes that they made along the way. There's a lot of extra detail and stuff that they've put in here that's not based on the material, as far as I know. I know there are additional like graphic novels and stuff created after the fact, so I don't know if there was anything pulled from those. I can't really speak to that, but I could say they've got they did make the bad guy not just some street thug guy. They did add it like a supernatural element to the bad guy in the film, played by Danny Houston, which I've just got to quickly say, Danny Houston, I'm sorry, great actor and all, but I don't find him intimidating at all. When he's a villain, I kind of like, who would be afraid of this guy?
To me, he looks like a slimmer Danny Aiello.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I'm like, you're like someone's like the dad next door who's angry about something. I understand. Like I cut through your yard and you're pissed off, but the street thugs I find a little more intimidating.
Well, and a little bit more believable than the way all this kind of played out with. There's no need to get in all the real details of that. There's a cool fight scene in a car that I thought was kind of cool.
Yes.
And brutal.
Some of the sequences were pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie there.
And I will say that I did like the effects. I liked you can see his skin knitting back together. It's not just like the old fade technique, kind of like what they did with the original film. I mean, you see skin starting to knit back together, and he has to like fix stuff stuff back in place so it will knit back. And that was cool. I thought that was
the audience I was with was all everybody. Oh, at that one point you're talking about, I was like,
well, there's two of them that are really.
I was like, I didn't. Need that. You could have just left that implied. I didn't need to know that. In the original, you were rooting for the Crow, Eric Draven, to get the revenge. You know, you felt his loss of Shelley.
Yeah.
In this one, I just never got the feeling. I never. It's like you talked about earlier that they don't develop the love story enough.
Yeah.
And I felt like in the first movie, Eric didn't need any push or motivation to go after these guys. This one, I felt like he needed to be kind of pulled along. Like, here's what you need to do if you want to avenge her.
Yeah.
And it felt, not saying he didn't want to, but it just felt a little, they have to kind of beat you over the head with it. Where in the original, there was no mistake, and he was out for blood and he was going to get it.
And I will say in the comics, I mean, he's got the Crow talking to him throughout. So the Crow is kind of.
So in the comic, does the Crow look more like Brandon Lee's character or this one?
Honestly, he looks more like a mixture.
Does it look like the Sandman?
Sandman. It looks more like a mixture between Sandman and Death. Those characters. Okay. I kind of thought that was kind of funny reading it, because I was thinking, I don't know where this. I don't know the time period of which came out first, but they're very reminiscent of each other. So Brandon Lee was closer. He's definitely had longer hair. They didn't do the whole.
He didn't have the
that spiky stuff.
Post Malone facial tattoos.
Right, I know.
But again, none of it. All of that stuff. None of it lends to the story.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much of this stuff that I guess I'm just an old, grumpy, irritated guy. That just these things they don't help the story along. They're unnecessary.
Yeah,
they're just unnecessary.
It's like details that were there for some reason that was never explained or told. You know, I don't know.
There's an audience for this. My daughter, my 19-year-old daughter, is going to see this Saturday. She just watched the original film last night, and she messaged me and said, "Oh my God, I loved it."
Oh, no. I said,
well, she goes, "What was it? What about the new one?" I said, "You go see it and let me know your thoughts."
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything to you. And I don't think she watches the show, so she's not going to worry about that. I don't think anybody watches the show. But
if you're still here, comment down below.
And no one's watching.
I guarantee you there's no comments. Okay.
So, again, I just say it again. I think there is an audience for this. I think there's a younger generation that's going to look at this and they like this character. They're gonna like this film. I assure you that. But I think people that really love the original, you're going to struggle with this a lot, and you're going to all you're going to do is compare it. That's all you're going to do. And if you do that, you're just going to be disappointed in the film all the way through. So that's it. We don't need to keep going. I give it 4. It's not the worst film I ever saw, and I don't think it's horrible. I live in the 1994 version, and I can't get that out of my head. So this just didn't deliver.
You know what? The 94 version was way more quotable too. I know that you often quote a couple lines for, and this one had, I mean, very little quotable parts for it. Hey, so I mean, that alone.
That's true. That's true.
Then again, you know, that was back in our youth.
Yeah, I mean, look, that was what, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So
please like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments if you've seen The Crow and what you thought about it. And if you're a fan, you know what? Are you a fan of The Crow and you saw it? Tell us what your thoughts are there, because I'm curious to hear that as well.
Yeah.
Caw-caw.
This has been a Touch of Madness production, brought to you by the creative minds at Tommy Twins Media.